Hi, my name is Elizabeth Pylant, and I am a student at Huntsville Bible College, and I'm also the wife of a wonderful husband. But I'm also a woman who had to go through my fair share of awkward and disastrous dates before meeting my love. Have any of you had disastrous dates that you were desperate for someone to save you from? Hopefully, you're like me and can look back on those dates and laugh today. So, I'm going to share one of my most memorable disastrous dates with you all. You could say this was the date that made me want to stop dating. Let me set the stage. I'm 30 years old, I'm single, and I've never been married. And not only was I losing my patience, but desperation was setting in. I was so ready to find the love of my life that I decided I would help the Lord out just a little bit. So, like any self respecting lady, I turned to online dating. I started with fairly high standards that were reflected in my profile search parameters. And I used the online dating site for a couple of weeks and I didn't really get any decent matches. Well, because of that, I decided that I would relax my standards a little bit. This was a massive mistake. Well, I finally connected with a guy that seemed decent. So we set up a time and place to meet. I remember the date as if it had happened yesterday. I told my brother and his wife where I was going and when I was going to meet this guy. You know, just in case he was a serial killer and someone would need to know where I was. I got to the restaurant and I remember standing at the counter. It was our local Panera Bread, nervously waiting on my date's arrival. This would be our first time meeting in person. When I finally saw him walk through the door of the restaurant, I could tell that maybe something wasn't quite right. He didn't look exactly like his pictures, but I knew it was him. So I waved to him to let him know it was me, and he awkwardly walked over and we said hellos. When it was time for us to order, the lady at the counter asked whether we were going to be paying together or separate. I made sure to let her know that we were paying for it separately because I could tell from our hellos that something wasn't quite right about this guy, and this would probably be our first and only date. Well, we got our meals, we found a table, and we sat down to eat. Before I took my first bite, I look up to see my brother and his wife walk through the door and sit at a table to spy on me while they ate their ice cream. Well, man, did they get a show. My date, I don't even remember his name though. And I started to, get to know each other a little bit. Simple conversation. Where we went to church, what kind of work we did, a little bit about our families. And this is when I was certain I had made a mistake in saying yes to this date. This guy started by telling me that he was currently unemployed because although it may seem chivalrous, it was not, because he had to quit his job to help his mother move. Now, if his mom were moving across the country or maybe to another state, this would have been understandable. She was not moving across the country, just across town. Oh, that's not the worst of it. He then proceeded to share with me that he lived with his mother and her 18 dogs. No, your ears do not deceive you. You heard me correctly. 18 dogs. I'm sure he saw the shock on my face because he started to explain really quickly that only 15 of the dogs lived inside. As the date went on and on and on about his mother, and her health issues and their dogs. I just wanted to bolt out of the door. I was at a loss for words, and I didn't know how I was going to get out of this date, but I didn't want to be rude. And man, was I relieved to see one of the restaurant workers start to clean the tables off and put the chairs up. I took my opportunity and I asked the worker if they were getting ready to close soon. And he told me they closed in about 10 minutes. I was saved. I told my date that we should probably get ready to go since the restaurant closed soon. He told me that they would have to make him leave. And I'm pretty sure he was serious. I nervously laughed like I thought, oh, he's just kidding. I know he wasn't. Well, I started to get up anyways and put my plate in the little plate receptacle. And thankfully, he followed suit and started to prepare to leave. Finally, I was close to ending one of the worst dates I had ever been on. We made our way to the parking lot, and I walked quickly to my truck, all the while telling him to be safe and it was nice to meet him. But I was certain not to tell him anything that would make him think that we would be on a second date. I buckled up and I headed home just as fast as I could. Of course, I took an alternate route just in case he followed me. He did not. Well, as funny as this may seem now, looking back at that terrible date, it did one thing for me. It was a great reminder to me that the Lord did not need my help in sending me a husband. I went home and I decided I would cancel my dating site membership. And in the next 3 years of waiting to meet my husband, there were times that I thought about doing online dating again. But I was reminded of my date with the man who lived with his mom and their 18 dogs. And I never got back on online dating after that. I did finally meet the love of my life in a small church in my small hometown. And we sat on the same row at church, just me and him, with 3 empty seats between us for about 6 months before we started dating. And we have now been happily married for 3 years, and I'm really glad that I finally left the matchmaking up to the Lord. Thank y'all so much for letting me share my disastrous date story and what I learned from it. And hopefully you don't have to endure your own disastrous date story. Have a good night.